Okay, today we're doing 5-2, and we are talking about parallel and perpendicular lines. So let's start off by defining what the two are. Now when we have parallel lines, these are going to be two lines in a plane that never meet. And I like to think of railroad tracks. And let's put an example. So we could have two straight lines. These are examples of parallel lines. Well, then let's also compare perpendicular lines. Perpendicular lines intersect at a 90-degree angle. So, for example, you could see a line like this and one that intersects it, and where they hit, they would make that 90-degree angle. Okay, we need to get another definition down, and that's called a transversal. And this is going to be a line that intersects any two or more, that's key, two or more other lines. So here's an example. Let's say that we have line K parallel. This symbol right here means parallel. Now when they show it, they're not going to put it in a circle. So line K is parallel to line N. So let's start with that. Let's just make that. So let's make a line, and let's call this K. And let's make another line, and let's call this N. Now notice these two lines are parallel. And then let's go back and let's say, and line S is transversal to line K and N. So all that means is we are going to take a line and we are going to cut right through them, and this is going to be line S. Now notice when we do this, we create other angles. So we have an angle here, 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 and here. So let's go ahead and label those with numbers. So we can say this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So we have 8 total angles. And we talked about this yesterday. Remember, these are vertical lines. So like we did yesterday where we can figure out one of the lines or one of the angles, we can do that here, but we're not going to go there yet. So let's just first figure out which ones are congruent. Alright. So remember, our symbol for congruent is the equal sign with the wavy sign above it. So if we look here, if we start with angle 1, remember we know that if this is angle 1, anything across from it is the same or congruent. So we know angle 1 is congruent to angle 4. Okay, let's start there. Well, if we look at angle 2, we know that that is congruent to angle 3. But if we look down here at this second part, these are going to be the exact same as those top ones. So we can go back and say, well, angle 1 and angle 5 are in the exact same spot if we put them right on top of each other. So angle 5 is also congruent to angle 1 and 4. So if angle 5 is, well, that means that angle 8 is also congruent to those other 3 angles. Well, then let's look. Also, angle 6 is congruent to 2 and 3. And the same thing can be said about angle 7. Since these angles are all congruent, they all have special names. And this figure is really helpful to be able to figure that out. So you can go back between the two slides to compare them, but we are going to define what they are. So if you notice the alternate interior, okay? The alternate interiors are these blue ones. They're alternate, so that means they are opposite. And interior means inside. So if you look at it, these are all on the inside of this transversal, and they're opposite one another, which also means that they are going to be congruent. Well, if we look at alternate exterior, alternate again, think of opposite. Now exterior means outside. So if we look at this, we look at these angles on the outside, notice these ones in red are the same, and the ones in blue are the same. So they are going to be congruent. And then finally, corresponding. All that means is if I took these and put them right on top of each other, they would be exactly the same. Okay, so this is a really good diagram to put in your notes. So we can put, if put on top of each other, will be the same. So we can use that in the next example. So let's look at this. We have a transversal here, and we know that this angle right here is 68 degrees. So let's see if we can find the measure of angle 4. Okay? Now remember, if we were to take this and put it right on top of this, what could be said about these two angles? Go back and look at the last slide we just had. Remember, they're corresponding. They're right on top of each other, so they would be the same. So the measure of angle 4 is 68 degrees. And I'm going to write that in here as well, because it might just help us see that. Let's see if we can find the measure of angle 3. Okay. So remember, like we did yesterday, these are vertical angles right here. So they should add up to 180 degrees. So we can say the measure of angle 3 plus 68 is going to equal 180 degrees. Because remember, a straight line equals 180 degrees. So let's just subtract 68 from both sides, and we get the measure of angle 3 equals 112 degrees. So we know right in here is 112 degrees. Now we should be able to figure out every single other angle without having to do any math. So see if you can find the measure of angle 1. The one right here on your own. You should have found this to be 112 degrees, because remember, vertical angles means these two are exactly the same. So what does that mean the measure of angle 2 is going to be? Remember, think of vertical angles. You should have found this to be 68 degrees. Now if we look at that bottom one, remember they correspond to this top one, so they should be exactly the same. So we can say the measure of angle 5. Well, the measure of angle 5 corresponds to the measure of angle 1. And we said measure of angle 1 was 112 degrees, so they're exactly the same. Well, what about the measure of angle 6? What is that going to be? what does it correspond to? Or what is it right across? You should have come up with 68 degrees. And finally, what about the measure of angle 7? What is that going to be? You should have found 112 degrees. Alright, you can now do the exit slip and then submit it, and then tomorrow we're going to be working on a lot of examples like this one we did here. Okay? Bye!